like to call to order the Milan Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Would everyone please rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you to those who are attending this evening, as well as those who will be watching the recording. Just a few items here before we get started. All board members are present. Assistant Superintendent Ryan McMahon is excused for a family obligation. He's able to watch his son participate in school activity. And then our student board members are also excused. First, we will start with board organization. We'll start with a discussion in regards to the Michigan Association of School Boards Region 7 Board of Directors representative election. So there are three nominees for us to choose from to cast our vote for District 7 or Region 7, which we're a part of. So those have been submitted to us. They are Guillermo Lopez, Corey McLaughlin, and Jack Temsey. So we'll just have a discussion about which one of these gentlemen we will nominate, and then we'll entertain a motion and vote. So does anybody want to start the discussion regarding the candidates in front of us? Mr. Farrell.
I support Mr. Lopez, looking at his background and the fact that he's an incumbent, and I felt comfortable with all of his MASB certifications. I think he would represent our region well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Farrell. Ms. Pryor?
Yes, so as I was reading through them, I actually support a different person, Jack Temsey. I like that he has served on two separate boards, for the RESA and for the local area. He was very thorough on the answering of his questions, so I felt like I understood what he was about, and his board certifications from MASB were quite impressive, so that would be my support at this time.
Others? Ms. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. I agree that both Mr. Lopez and Mr. Temsey looked like very strong candidates. I don't know either of them personally, but I agree with Mrs. Pryor that I was more struck by Mr. Temsey's bio. I appreciated that he has held offices at every level of the school board, as well as serving on multiple different boards. And his answers about the importance of public education and the need to be very cognizant of protecting public education really resonated with me.
Ms. Murray?
I would echo what Ms. Gutierrez was saying. I would be comfortable supporting Mr. Lopez for your same aforementioned reasons. His tenure as the incumbent is respectable, and I don't have any concerns at this time, but things that stood out to me about Mr. Temsey were, again, yes, his fervent support for public education, his attention to the diversity within our education institutions, and the fact that they represent a small community. It sounds like his experience is similar to our small community, some of the challenges that we face. So I would be comfortable supporting either of those candidates.
Others? Mr. Burdette?
I will essentially echo kind of everyone else here. I would be comfortable with both Mr. Lopez and Mr. Temsey. I would, however, if I had to lean one way, I would go with Mr. Lopez. I know in his election statement talking about being aware of the education funding changes that is going on with the federal government. I feel like with the political climate the way that it is, I think the experience that he has is going to play a major role in making sure that we're doing what we need to do. So that's essentially where I would go with it.
All right. Any others?
Mr.
Yeah,
Sislo,
Ms. Heike.
I also agree. I would be very comfortable with either one of them. I would lean towards Mr. Temsey because I think that when you look at the districts that they came from, I appreciate that he comes from a smaller community, and I think that sometimes we see it in our own ISD that the smaller communities' voices get overlooked, and I appreciate that we would have someone there that's thinking about the smaller districts while they're voting and setting policy.
All right, I support everything that you've mentioned. I do appreciate Mr. Lopez reaching out to us, and his service to MASB. I guess I'm kind of on the same page here as far as, being able to support both, but I mean, representing the small town is definitely something that we should consider based on our own demographics. So, from what I'm hearing, I would entertain a motion to direct superintendent or the designee to cast the district's vote for MASB Region 7 Board of Directors position for Jack Temsey.
Moved by Pryor.
Support by Gutierrez.
So it's been moved and supported to direct the superintendent or designee to cast the district's vote for MASB Region 7 Board of Directors position for Jack Temsey. Is there any more discussion?
Mr. Sislo?
Yeah, Mr. Farrow.
Just having heard my colleagues, I have no issues supporting Jack Dempsey.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and supported to direct the superintendent or designee to cast the district's vote for MASB Region 7 Board of Directors position for Jack Temsey. Ms. Murray?
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika,
Yes.
Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0.
All right. Next, we'll move on to communications and community engagement. A reminder that this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It's not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you will be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who'd like to address the board? Are there any public members who'd like to address the board? Just make sure to press the button there, Mr. Elder.
All right, sorry. George Elder. 3 things. Last week's board meeting, you kind of belittled the parents for not showing up to the Big Red chat, saying that there was a late number. We had representatives there, and then I just don't understand what the fact of going to the Big Board chat whenever you all said you're not going to post a position for the superintendent. So what's our input? I don't understand. What's our input? Care. And second of all, this is not a platform. Last week's meeting, or 2 weeks ago, was 36 minutes. You guys spent 10 minutes criticizing our president and our officials up at the federal level. The school board's not here in my school. It's for the safety and education of the students here in the Milan district. We got to follow the rules, whatever it is. Third, the recording devices found in the bathrooms. It was not brought to the community at all attention. What should have been said, I understand the conflict of interest with, impeding an investigation, but there should have been a statement out saying, hey, we secured all the locker rooms, no other devices were found, and everybody's privacy is safe. None of that was, I learned about this in Ann Arbor from a parent who was in the swim club. And with the investigation, isn't there so many conflicts of interest here? You got board members that talk about the swim all the time. You've got a police department that's bought and paid for by the Milan district. Wouldn't you get called the state police instead of somebody that we pay to do an investigation? And with Mr. D was a very, very well-liked guy. I don't think there's an argument of what, everybody enjoyed him, and we'll miss him, and good luck in whatever he does. I'm sure he's going to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Are there others? All right, next up for routine matters for approval. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 29th, 2025.
Moved by Heike.
Support by Gutierrez.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 29th, 2025. Any discussion? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, January 29th, 2025. Ms. Murray?
Heike,
Yes.
Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next I need a motion to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses.
Motion by Pryor.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Any discussion? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Ms. Murray?
All right. Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heike.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up in the area, now we'll move on to Milan Area School Strategic Business. In the area of personnel and leadership, we will talk about the superintendent selection process. So we did have, excuse me, I'm sorry. We did have our meeting with the Milan Education Association. The personnel committee did. That meeting went well. We got a lot of feedback from them. It's been part of the process to talk to all those stakeholders. We heard information from them as far as what they would be looking for in a superintendent. They talked about having somebody who's supportive, who's present. Also, one of the things that came across was, a sense of humbleness that they wanted the superintendent to learn from them. That the superintendent may not know everything, and there's some things that they can provide value to the superintendent themselves. One of the things that they said that they value and would continue to look for is someone that values all the levels of education throughout Milan, secondary and elementary. Sometimes in other districts, they know that because the superintendent is usually with the higher levels, sometimes the lower levels tend to get ignored. So they don't feel that here, and they want that to continue. They want that they want that to be something that is continued to be valued. They also valued central office experience. That was one of the things that was evident from that conversation. Again, it was another conversation with a group that we got feedback from as part of the process. Mr. Farrow and Ms. Gutierrez were part of that discussion. Is there anything else from that discussion that you guys can?
I mean, I can say that what you've relayed is it was a positive meeting, and the theme has been consistent amongst the groups that we have talked with. I appreciated the folks taking time out of their day to meet with us.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Sislo and Mr. Farrow. It was a very nice conversation. I think we spoke for about an hour. I think the resounding message from our staff was that they hope that their next superintendent will be someone who will work in partnership with our teachers and our support staff, which is something we've heard all along, and someone who will will continue to listen to our staff about best practices, their recommendations, and take that into account in the leadership of the district. And so it was a very nice conversation, and I think the message was consistent with what we've heard with our other union groups thus far.
The other thing that I want to bring up quickly was I did have the opportunity, and we can talk about this during our discussion as well, but I had the opportunity to attend the board president's workshop as part of the Winter Institute through the Michigan Association of School Boards, and talk to a lot of the other presidents throughout Michigan, the school boards. And one of the things that they talked about, and we've discussed here, is that the value of an internal candidate if you have one, and what that allows for. With a succession plan, to have that internal candidate that has that experience should definitely be considered. And that was one of the things that, a lot of the board presidents that had a lot of experience said that was something that was valuable to have that. And the recommendation was, highly to make sure that an internal candidate would be considered. So I thought taking that experience and that feedback from those that have experienced it, I thought that was helpful as something else that we consider as we go through this process. So the other thing that was completed before our last meeting, before this meeting, is the survey data. So that's where we asked all the stakeholders to provide feedback. It was another opportunity, again, with the process for our stakeholders to provide that feedback. Again, it was opened up to students, staff, parents, grandparents, residents of the city. Again, part of the process to gain that data back, because obviously that's the only way that we can tell what that data is going to be. So we have received that data back. Ms. Gutierrez has compiled that, and she's going to share that with us. So, Ms. Gutierrez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sislo. I'll hand out the slides that I have prepared, which are really just a handout. I'll wait until everyone has those in hand so we can go through those. Okay. So as Mr. Sislo mentioned, we sent out a survey that was developed within the Personnel Committee in conjunction with MASB, which is our leadership and guiding body. The survey was sent out mid-January and was open until February 7th. It was sent, as Mr. Sislo said, to district families, district students, I believe middle school and above, and was also shared on city social media platforms. And so, as Mr. Sislo noted, we had some individuals who don't have children in the district, but were keen to complete it as well. Several reminders were sent out, and we really did have a very robust response rate. We received 318 unique responses. As you'll see in the figure there, about 15% of those responses were from a currently enrolled district student, which I thought was fabulous, that of the 318 responses, that's about 50 unique students. Most of them noted that they completed it by themselves. There were a couple students who completed it with their parent, where they selected student and parent. But I just thought that was really wonderful that we were able to get responses in here from our students, because of course that's a priority as well. 60% of responses were parent or guardians. That's 192 unique individuals. And then nearly 30%, 91 individuals were staff members, and that includes a distribution of teachers, support staff, and administrators. So of those 49 teachers, 36 support staff, and 9 administrators. And so I think the big messages here are great response rate, 15% representation from students, 60% were parents, and then almost 30% were staff. As Mr. Sislo mentioned, we did have about 5% of people who were residents in the district without students enrolled. Some of those were teachers, but some of those were just individuals who don't have a formal affiliation with the district but do live in our community. So I was glad to see their responses as well. So if you go to the next slide, we asked individuals if they worked in the district, how long they've worked in the district, and the vast majority of those individuals who worked in the district, of course, about 2/3 of them didn't work in the district, but of those that worked in the district, nearly half of them had worked here for 10 years or more, which I think speaks many things, including the longevity of our staff in the district. And then among those who live in the district, we asked them how long they've lived in the district, and similarly, more than half of them, nearly 60%, have lived in this district for more than 10 years. I will note we do have a substantial number of new families, so 11% of respondents had lived in the district for less than 5 years. And so this, I think, speaks to the importance of understanding the mix of individuals in our district. On the next slide, we asked what is the minimum level of education that we would want the Board of Education to consider for a superintendent candidate. And so options were bachelor's degree, master's degree with a school administrative certificate or endorsement, and then a doctorate degree, and then also don't have a preference. More than half of respondents selected a master's degree plus that school administrative endorsement. That was almost 57%. And the next most prevalent one was a master's degree. And so I think we get a strong sense from our community that that level of education, and particularly with that administrative certificate, is really important in this role. We also asked positions that a superintendent candidate may have had previously that may be viewed as giving them the most valuable experience for being the next superintendent. We had several roles that were available and asked respondents to select up to 3. The possibilities included superintendent in another school district, assistant superintendent, special education director, finance director, school principal, teacher, and then the prior positions do not matter. And so we had 2 that were kind of standing out from others. Nearly 70%, 69.5% of respondents selected assistant superintendent as a position that would be most valuable for the next superintendent, followed closely at 65% by school principal. And then just below that, for 45 to 46% of respondents said either a teacher or a superintendent in another school. And so here I think we are again seeing a strong message about 2/3 believing that the assistant superintendent role or school principal would be the most appropriate. On the next slide, we gave a set of expertise that a superintendent candidate may possess. There were a series of different categories. And then we asked respondents to please rate the importance of each area of expertise for the role of superintendent. Those categories included budget development, contract labor negotiation, curriculum development and evaluation, facilities management, financial management, human resources, and public relations. And of those categories, respondents could select whether they were either not important, slightly important, moderately important, very important, or critically important. And I would note that in the survey, those of you who took it will have noticed that we really encouraged people to use kind of the whole breadth of the selection, and noting that all of these things may be important for a superintendent, but to really save those highest marks of critically important for the things that really were deemed as most important in the respondent's mind. Of those categories, of those 7 categories, the item that received the highest marks for being deemed as critically important was financial management. Nearly 127 respondents or so, just about half, noted that they felt that financial management was critically important, followed very closely by very important. So overwhelmingly, financial management was deemed as very or critically important. The next closest one that was deemed as critically important was curriculum development and evaluation, followed very, very closely by budget development. And so I will note that every single one of these had highest marks for very important or critically important. That's not the question here. The question is, which characteristics did our respondents feel were the most critically important? And here it seems to be financial management, curriculum development, and budget development. On the next slide, there's a lot of data here. I tried to condense it. We had a list of specific experiences or skills that a superintendent may possess. And based on the respondent's perspective, we asked them to rate the level of importance of each specific experience or skill in the role of superintendent. Again, responses could include not important, slightly important, moderately important, very important, or critically important. And again, we asked respondents to reserve their highest marks for the things that they deemed most critical. The options of different skills or experiences included ability to develop and direct an effective management team, actively building relationships with staff members, adept at media relations and public relations, being already familiar with the district, demonstrating responsiveness to students with learning differences, exceedingly responsive, follows up and follows through, excellent speaking skills with small and large groups, experience with school bond, millage, sinking fund, election, and implementation efforts, fostering professional development of staff, maintaining visibility and accessibility with all stakeholders, having a proven track record of raising student academic achievement, having a proven track record of active advocacy for public education, having a strong knowledge of curriculum research and deployment, having a strong knowledge and experience with school financial matters, and having successful experience with diverse communities. And so again, I'll review the items that received the highest marks for being critically important, as those are the ones that we would deem being the highest ranking among all of those characteristics. The item that received the highest number of critically important responses was a very, very close tie within just a couple of numbers, so I'll itemize all of those. Those include ability to develop and direct an effective management team, followed by actively building relationships with staff members, and then finally being exceedingly responsive, following through and following up. Again, all of these things were deemed as being important. Perhaps the one that had the greatest distribution across all of the categories was being adept at media and public relations and being already familiar with the district. But those also leaned towards being more moderately important or more, just not ranked quite as high as the others. On the next page, we listed a set of personal characteristics that a superintendent candidate may possess. Once again, we asked participants to rate the level of importance of each personal characteristic, and again, asked them to reserve their votes of critically important for those that were deemed most critical. The options here included problem solver, honest and ethical, visionary, personable and kind, transparent, tenacious or someone who doesn't give up, being a strong communicator, being a strong listener, being firm, being collaborative, being approachable, being assertive, and being inclusive or culturally competent. Of those, I think there were 13 items there. Over and above, answered by nearly every respondent as being critically important or very important was being honest and ethical. That was really standing out among all of the characteristics as being the most important. I would note that that was followed closely by being transparent and being a strong listener, and then perhaps next followed by being approachable and a strong communicator. So I think here having strong ethics and being able to be open about communication clearly came through as being important to our community. And then on the last page, we had a omnibus question that noted, there are many values that go into the selection of a superintendent. Given this, there was a bit more preamble to this question. But the question ultimately was, the board should consider one of three options. Either A, a candidate who will stay the course and continue the same work of the current administration. Item B, a candidate with similar educational and management philosophy as the current administration, but who can make some necessary changes. And then C, a candidate who is ready to take the district in a significantly different direction. 2/3 of our respondents noted that their preference was a candidate with similar educational and management philosophy as the current administration, but who can make some necessary changes. That was then, in addition to that, there was 15% of individuals who thought that we should consider a candidate who would stay the course and continue the same work of the current administration. And 22% of individuals did note that they thought we should consider a candidate who is ready to take the district in a significantly different direction. So here, I think the message is about 2 out of 3 respondents noted that having a similar philosophy as our current administration, but being prepared to make some necessary changes was the strong preference. And that's the end of my report. Oh, I had one more thing, I'm sorry. It's not on there, but I did run I'm a data person, so I kind of had to dig a little bit. So I did look if this last question varied by your role in the district, whether students felt differently than parents, than teachers, and it did not. There was, both, you could look at the figures and see there was no difference, but even statistically, there was no statistically significant difference. And so this was the sentiment that was shared across all of our stakeholders. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Mr. Farrell.
Yes, so I have a few comments, being a member of the Personnel Committee. First, I do want to share that the Big Red Board Chat, while I was disappointed in the number of folks that attended the board chat, those that did attend provided us good input, good feedback. It was important, and we felt it was valuable. So as many of you know, we've spent the last few months meeting with various union representatives, building administrators, support staff, members of the community, and most recently with MEA representatives as it relates to the superintendent position. We also did a deep dive before you got to see the deep dive on the recent survey results that Dr. Gutierrez just shared. And I want to note that the participation level on the survey was quite good and valuable. There was a lot of participation on the survey. So while the three of us on the Personnel Committee have gone through this process, we feel there has been a consistent theme, and that is that an individual currently employed in our district appears to check all the boxes needed to serve as superintendent and is worthy of our most serious consideration. That individual is Mr. Ryan McMahon. As a result, the Personnel Committee, comprised of myself, Mr. Sislo, and Dr. Gutierrez, has a recommendation for the full board to consider on how to proceed. The Personnel Committee recommends that we invite Mr. McMahon to an in-person conversation with the full board in open session at a future Board of Education meeting. This conversation would allow the board to confirm Mr. McMahon's interest in the superintendent role, and we believe an in-person conversation would serve as a good time for Mr. McMahon to share his vision and his goals for the district and answer any questions from the Board of Education. After we've had this dialogue as a full board with Mr. McMahon, the board can consider the next steps. The Personnel Committee seeks consensus from our colleagues to proceed in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow, and thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. So, as Mr. Farrow said, that is the recommendation of the Personnel Committee. So we're seeking consensus tonight if that's something that that the full board wants to move forward with, or if you want the Personnel Committee to go back and do some reconsideration. We are open for discussion and again looking for consensus. So, Ms. Heike.
Mr. Sislo, I don't know how many in the community know Mr. McMahon's path here in the district, but he was a long-serving principal here at the high school. And then when the assistant superintendent position opened up, I was one of many that called him and encouraged him to apply for it based on our interactions with him as the principal of the high school. I agree with the committee's recommendation. Having known Ryan for many, many years now, I agree with the recommendation that, he checks off many of these boxes and should be given our strong consideration for this role.
Thank you, Ms. Heika. Others? Ms. Murray?
Yes. I too am in support of inviting Mr. McMahon to come and speak at an open meeting. I agree that his track record and history and background education, commitment to the district checks near every box that is indicated within the survey. I believe that he does possess the skills that align with what our community is sharing with us. And just to sort of echo Ms. Heika's sentiments, I had the privilege of serving with Mr. McMahon as a staff member during my time here in the district, and I have the unique opportunity to interact with him from the ISD perspective in my current job, and he has always and consistently impressed me, both with his commitment to students and his knowledge of curriculum and pedagogy, his interest in educational technology, and I could continue. But I also agree that he's been sort of the wizard behind the curtain in a lot of ways for our district, and I think that it will be really important for our community to have the opportunity to meet him in a much more formal capacity and hear from him directly how he would seek to move our district forward. So while I have, currently full faith in him, I think that it's really important for us to take that next step and allow him that time to speak to our community. So that's where I'm at. I support that plan.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Others? Mr. Burdette?
I just want to say that I am in consensus with the Personnel Committee and the rest of the board members thus far. And I just want to thank the Personnel Committee for all the work that they put into putting this study together. And a big thank you to the community as well for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Burdette. Others? Ms. Pryor?
I also am in consensus. From the time I've spent getting to know Ryan, I didn't know him previously. He seems very knowledgeable. He's personable. I've seen him at events, participating with staff, students, has good interactions. I think that his commitment to the district is impressive and that we should give him a chance to come in and talk. So I'm also in consensus.
Mr. Sissel, can I say, I wrote this
Sure.
down and forgot to
Yeah,
say
Ms.
this.
Heika.
But I also want to thank the community for participating in the survey. I mean, these results were really invaluable, and we are taking your feedback very seriously. And like this many people participating in a survey is unheard of.
Yeah.
So I just really appreciate everyone that took the time to fill this out, and particularly our students, because I know you don't get a ton of opportunities to tell, particularly the board, how you feel and what you would like to see happen. And so the fact that so many of you took the time to do that, I just really appreciate it and want you to know that your anonymous voices have been heard. So thank you.
Hey, Mr. Farrow.
Yeah, I just want to say a few personal comments. One is that the survey results really support a lot of what I heard as an individual, meeting with the various groups, building administrators, support staff, members in the community. It's hard to get around the community without being stopped. I just feel like the survey was a very useful tool, and it really confirmed a lot of what we have been hearing from many groups. So I just thought I would offer that.
Ms. Gutierrez, yeah.
Yes, I'll echo what Mr. Farrow said. As he alluded to in his introductory statement, we heard a very strong and consistent message from all of our union groups. first, that they were looking for someone who would be highly supportive of staff, who would be able to manage the staff well, that was going to be a strong communicator, that would be open and transparent. And then unprovoked or unsolicited by us, Ryan's name did come up several times. And when we go through and look at the survey data, many of the things that were said in those contexts about Mr. McMahon are reflected here in the survey. Things like being present, being a strong communicator. There was one other I wanted to highlight, sorry. Oh, having this strong ability to respond to staff, work with staff, and be present. And so those two things inadvertently really aligned with what we were hearing staff wanting, what we were hearing the community want, and then what we were hearing from our stakeholders about Mr. McMahon himself. And so I think those two things converged, and given that, I was highly supportive and am highly supportive of inviting Mr. McMahon here to share his vision with us for the district.
Cool, thank you. So, Mr. Elder, I appreciate you expressing your comments. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I can understand that perspective. And similar to what we've talked about here, you know, we did go through a process, and we have heard from the staff and the teachers, and we've heard from the community what they're looking for in a superintendent. If Mr. McMahon wasn't mentioned as part of those conversations, this process would have taken a different turn. I think because of what we've heard during this process from the people that work for Milan area schools, these results that we are seeing with the characteristics that have been observed of Mr. McMahon, there was a story from every group of Mr. McMahon going above and beyond, knowing staff members by their names, greeting them, being there for them. He had some tough times when he first started as principal in this district, and that was noted by the staff, that he worked through that and hasn't left because of those circumstances. So that's what this was part of a process. And again, if we had heard differently in regards to what the staff and what the community wanted, this process would have been different, and this recommendation would have been different. So I too value the opportunity for Mr. McMahon to present that in front of the board and in an open session in front of the community. And that was one of the things that was brought up by the MEA. It's that Mr. McMahon may not necessarily be known in the community because he hasn't been a principal, because he was principal so long ago, or longer ago, that there's not many people that have interacted with him. So it'll be important for him to come to us and present that as we move forward in this process. So what I'm hearing is that there is consensus to move forward with that. The personnel committee will reach out to Mr. McMahon to schedule his appearance in front of the board to provide his vision to us and some questions to be answered. We'll do that at a future board meeting. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. Next up brings us back to communications and community engagement. Are there any students who'd like to address the board? Are there any public members who'd like to address the board?
George Older, and I just want everybody to know that, to be clear, I'm on high alert for retaliation against my kids.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Student board members are excused. Mr. McMahon is excused. Superintendent comments. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you. Just a few quick things tonight. One, after defeating Airport on February 11th, the Milan boys varsity bowling team became the Huron League champs. Congratulations to all of those bowlers on the team. I do want to share, as Mr. Elder alluded to, Mr. DeSarbo, the Paddock principal for the last 16 years, has announced his retirement effective March 14th of this year. We wish Mr. DeSarbo well and wish him the best in his future endeavors. The district will begin the process of hiring a new Paddock principal following the board-approved hiring procedures for building principals. There's a very defined process that we will use. Part of that is having an open communication with the community and open communication with the staff of that building. And then the procedures get into how many staff members are on the first round interview team and how they are highly involved at the building level in helping select those candidates that then move up to a district level panel. We bring some of the building level panel up to the district level panel. So staff has a lot of say in hiring the next principal. That's the process we've used in all of our buildings. It's been very effective, and we look forward to it. It's just a little bit different. Paddock has not had that process in 16 years, so there aren't too many people around in that building that went through this the last time we hired a principal. So Mr. DeSarbo did announce to his staff earlier this week. I was there. I shared that procedures document with them. I think that made them feel very comfortable that they're going to have a lot of input into that process. And so in the next week or two, I would recommend that our community watch. We will have a parent evening where we'll invite folks in to tell us what they would like to see in the next principal of Paddock Elementary School. Some sad news, Denise Cook, one of our middle school paraprofessionals, lost her father earlier this week, and our thoughts are with her. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Board member comments. And if you did attend a class as part of the Winter Institute, feel free to share your learnings from that. So, yeah, Ms. Pryor.
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend a few classes this week as part of the Institute. One of the main takeaways I had from it was about building effective committees, how you, not to have too many was something that was really interesting. Some of these schools had like 9 or 10 different committees, and they were unable to get things done. Going through our process, I think that Milan has has a good process already laid out. We follow our strategic plan. We have our committees based around those, so we're well on our way. So that was interesting to know that we were supported in that way. Another, I did take 2 other ones, one with Mr. Farrow, so I won't steal his thunder. I'll let him talk about that one, but they were beneficial to learn from other board members around the state, the challenges they're facing, things they're facing, and like we talked about before, a consistent theme throughout all of them was discussing the issues with finding reliable superintendents. So 2 separate schools that I did talk with have interim superintendents. One they've had for more than a year because they cannot find a candidate that is qualified enough to run their district, and the person who's in it doesn't want to stay. He's just there to help out. So I am pleased with the process that we have, and that we have a good internal person to start with. So I don't have any other comments tonight. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Ms. Heiko.
Mr. Sislo. So I sent Virginia home and wouldn't let her attend the meeting tonight. So I'll tell you what she texted me earlier that she was going to announce. From her perspective, the dance, the coho dance, went very well. They had fun. She thought it went great. She wanted to announce that every year the Milan varsity softball team and JV teams now host a softball camp. I think it's for grade school kids, and the registration for that closes tomorrow. I've been seeing it circulating on Facebook. If you're on the Milan Big Reds, if you follow that athletic Facebook page. You can see it there, and you can go online and sign up. She also wanted to tell everyone that on Friday at halftime of the boys' basketball game, they'll be honoring many fall, winter, and spring sports from 2024. I know the girls' softball team is one of the ones that will be honored. I believe also the girls' swim team will be honored for their 25 years of dominating the Huron Lake. So come watch the boys' basketball game and see all of those great athletes be honored at halftime. For myself, I want to apologize for missing the last meeting. I had to travel for work, and I tried really hard to catch an early flight to be here, and it just didn't work out. So I apologize for missing. I also want to encourage our community. I heard again on my way in from work tonight that there are additional threats to abolish the Department of Education. The Federal Department of Education is responsible for many things, including enforcement of Title IX. So I find it a little confusing that in one breath there's a claim to protect women, but then in the next breath we're threatening to abolish the very department charged with protecting them. So that's an important piece of what the Department of Education does that I don't think many people realize. The Department of Education also provides funding for special ed students. And it's unclear what will happen with that funding if the department is abolished. I've heard everything from there just won't be any funding to that funding will be provided as a block grant to individual states. That sounds great, but the problem with the block grant is that it's not necessarily based on need. It is often based on the power of your representatives. And small rural communities like us tend to lose out when it is a block grant. So losing that funding in the way that it is administered now based on need would be very devastating to our district generally, because that money's got to come from someplace, because I don't hear any discussion of abolishing our obligations to our special needs students, which should not happen. But if we get rid of the funding, but we have these obligations, that money's got to come from someplace. And so, abolishing this department, messing with the funding, this will impact our most vulnerable students. And so I understand the concerns, but I think there's just a better way to manage this. The one thing I also want to make very clear to our community is that the Department of Education does not set curriculum. They don't. They don't set the curriculum for our district. They don't set the curriculum for any other district. So this idea that by eliminating the Department of Education that suddenly we're going to, abolish whatever people think is wrong with our curriculum, it's just not going to happen. It's not. The next thing I want to talk about is I am a huge supporter of both the Milan Swim Club and the high school and the middle school teams. In fact, I was at a swim meet last night. Didn't have a swimmer, but I was still there. I am not participating in the investigations being conducted by either the police department or the school district or whoever else is investigating it, because that would be inappropriate. And so I am just trusting that the experts will manage their investigations according to their obligations, and I'm letting that run its course, because that's what's right to do. As a long-term board member as a long-term board member who has been focused on our budget for a very long time, and the current treasurer, I can assure the community that we have not bought and paid for the police department. That's just simply purposeful misinformation. Ending on a happier note, I want to congratulate the boys bowling teams for their first ever Huron League championships. That's just so incredible, and I've been following them, and the girls teams. They've been very successful over the last several years, and one of them bowled his first 300 game the other day, and then they were talking about bowling multiple 300 games. So I just, as someone who struggles to break 100, I am in awe of them and their abilities. I also want to wish Mr. DeSarbo well in his future endeavors. He was the principal to all three of my kids at Paddock. But I also had one kid who experienced pre-Mr. DeSarbo paddock. And the environment that he created there, and his willingness to get his staff involved and to listen to them and to together build what is Paddock, which is just this bright shining star in our district, is simply amazing. And he did it so quickly. I know that we've kind of taken it for granted, but he quickly came in, and there was a palpable difference in that building, because I had a kid in there when the change happened, and it was just absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I think Mr. DeSarbo did very well and very quickly, and I have often talked about it when we're hiring other principals, and we've always said, could we just clone Mr. DeSarbo? What could we do to clone him? Is that he appreciated the smallness of our community. And it is not an exaggeration that if you have been through pickup or drop off, he knows kids' names. He knows who they're related to. He knows what's going on in their families, and he remembers. And so if my son walked in here today, he would stop and talk to him, and he would remember his experiences, and he keeps following all those kids all the way through. I don't know how he keeps it all in his head, but he is just super amazing. I'm sad he's moving on, but I'm very excited for what he's going to do next.
Thank you, Ms. Heike. Mr. Farrow.
So I attended 6 of the MASB workshops, sessions over this past weekend. This time of year actually works best for me versus other times of the year. So I was on courses that talked about community engagement, public relations, superintendent shortages, superintendent searches, strategies, working with and onboarding new board members, improving and managing communication, and then also learning ways about promoting all the good things that our district and our community does. That came through in a couple of the sessions. So I want to thank the district for giving me the opportunity to take those educational courses. I too would like to congratulate the bowling team on their Huron League championship. That's just awesome and exciting. I also want to thank Sean DeSarbo for his many years of service to our district. My son also was at Paddock Elementary, and he was one of the first folks that I met when we moved from the Lincoln schools to Milan schools. He's just a tremendous human being. He's just been a great advocate and a tremendous leader, and I wish him well with his retirement and his future endeavors. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that if you are a high school senior, the Community Foundation of Monroe County offers a number of scholarships, including 11 that are specific for Milan High School students. So for more information, please be sure to check out the Community Foundation website. All applications are due on February 21st. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Others? Ms. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Sislo. Like many of our board members, I also attended some trainings over the weekend at the Winter Institute. I didn't hit 6 like Mr. Farrow. I hope you have a standing desk, Mr. Farrow. I attended 2. One was the CBA 102, which is governing through policy. I think Mr. Burdette was in that as well. We didn't get to really see each other in there, but I saw his name in the Brady Bunch screens. That one was very useful to me in terms of thinking about the way in which policy can be enacted at multiple levels within the district, and thinking about setting achievable goals. And something really resonated with me that one of I think it was the instructor noted that we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in 3 years. And so it just, as Mrs. Pryor and I were talking earlier today about reframing some policy agendas and goals here in Milan with our board. I think that's something for us to keep in mind about how much we can do, but not wanting to over commit ourselves. The other one I attended was reporting and monitoring organizational performance. That was CBA 229. And so that one, we went through the various ways in which the board and the community can get data and information in a fluid manner back and forth between the school district, highlighting the importance of anecdotal reports, retrospective reports, and prospective reports, and thinking about looking at reports about the process versus looking at reports about the data. And I was just really shocked by how many school districts could not answer simple questions like, do you know what the attendance rates are in your district? Do you know what your graduation rates are? And I would like to highlight for our community the many ways in which we at this board table get information and reports. We get them through Mr. Gearbach and Mr. McMahon's meeting reports. We get written feedback on test scores. We hear from our community. And so all of that to say, and speaking with other board members across the state, I'm really very grateful for the multiple ways in which this board is informed and receives information from many of our stakeholders. The other thing I wanted to share with our community that was highlighted as a great data source, if you haven't been, is myschooldata.org, MISCHOOLDATA. Let me make sure it's .org so I'm not misspeaking. Yes, .org, thank you. So that has a ton of data out there about districts across the state. You can also take a look at our district and look at financial transparency, education data, and so forth. And so, again, being a data person, that was fun for me to play around with, but also I think was very accessible for anyone who wanted to get some information about our district. So thank you to the district, thank you to the community for supporting our ongoing professional development and education. I think it continues to add to our skill set and be a better board. Second of all, I'd like to extend my apologies to the impression of the community that I was being critical of the lack of participation at the Big Red Board Chat. I think one thing we at this board table have had over the time I've been on the board is ongoing conversations about what is the best way to engage with our community. And I think the Big Red Board Chats have been at the first blush, a really great way to have two-way conversations, which always can't happen in a board meeting with our community, and yet we've seen consistently low attendance. And so I didn't mean to interpret that as lack of participation on our community. I think what it tells us is that perhaps that's not the best way that our community wants to share information with us. And so I apologize if anyone interpreted it as a criticism. Instead, I think what we've learned is that this survey mechanism was incredibly effective at getting feedback from our community. I'm really excited about the positive response rate, and I would encourage our board to continue to think through how to best engage with our community. I know we have a communications committee that is continuing to think on that, and so I hope that that is a conversation we continue to have, because we do know that's so important. I would also like to congratulate the boys bowling team. It was later last evening and I heard bangs going off. I live right by Paddock. And, you know, what do you do when you're in Milan and you need to know what's going on? You hop on the True Friends of Milan. And it was noted that that was in celebration of the Boys Huron League Championship. And so that was really very exciting, especially because, as Mrs. Heike mentioned, there were several 300s bowled. And I had just been bowling that afternoon with my son. We hang out on Tuesday nights and we went bowling. And my goal was to break 100, and I peaked at 67. So I can't tell you how wonderful that speaks to the talent that we have on our boys bowling team and our girls bowling team too, and the leadership and support that our coaches give to those students. My son bowled last year as a 7th grader and really, or maybe as a 6th grader, I don't recall, and just had a wonderful experience, really welcoming to the sport, and I'm very grateful to the work that that team does. And then finally, I'd like to send my congratulations to Mr. DeSarbo. Sean is the reason we moved to Milan, actually. We were looking at districts just before my daughter was born, and I knew that we should be paying attention to the schools first and foremost, given that we had a little one and one on the way. And I called Mr. DeSarbo, kind of cold call, and said, what can you tell me about your building? What can you tell me about the district? And he stayed on the phone with me for far in excess of half an hour, 45 minutes. I knew it was after school time, and then he invited me to come down and take a look at the building. And he was one of those people that you instantly have an appreciation for the work he does. In addition to being the principal in the building when my children were there, also I engaged with him regularly as a board member on the PTO at that time. And I really appreciated getting to know Sean, because every time that we would bring something to him, a request or just a question, he would identify what was a solvable problem and he would solve it. And I remember one day, one of the things we brought up was that Mr. Evans, the technology teacher at the time, had noted that he was having a hard time with the kindergartners learning technology on computers, because they don't use computers anymore. They use iPads, and how great it would be to have a set of iPads for the kindergartners. And so Sean was like, well, that's a solvable problem. And he called Brian, and next thing we knew, we had raised some money and the district kicked in some money and we had iPads, and it has really changed kind of the course of that technology curriculum. And I just saw that over and over with Mr. D. He's also someone, my husband worked with him for several years at Paddock, and they became very, very good friends. But I saw on the other side Sean as someone who really celebrated his staff and noticed his staff. And there were a couple times in particular that a little creepy, but I would get a picture, like a unstaged picture of my husband working with a student or doing something, and he would just say, I just want you to know I saw the work he was doing today, and I really appreciate that. And it not only made me, of course, so proud of my husband and the work, but proud of the atmosphere that Sean was building in that space. And I know, hearing from his staff over and over, that they feel supported, they feel seen, and that goes all the way down to the learners. And so all of that to say, Sean has become a very good friend over the years. I'm going to miss him terribly. I know he's had a really, really tough year, and I wish him all of the best in what comes next. And I think he's left a really indelible mark on Milan area schools, and so I'm sad to see him go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Mr. Burdette.
I want to echo the rest of the board and congratulate the boys bowling team on their Huron League championship, as well as saying thank you to Mr. DeSarbo. Both of my kids had, he was the principal and my kids were in school as well, and he will be greatly missed, that's for sure. I did attend I was only able to attend the CBA 102 class on governing through policy, but as a new board member, I think the main takeaway was just how important it is in that creation and implementation of policy, and how, the interaction between the board and the district. And I also enjoyed, there were many instances of different breakout sessions where we were able to actually chat with, 4 or 5 different school board members from all across the state, and kind of hearing their perspectives, and it was very rewarding. So I'd like to thank the district for that opportunity. Lastly, I would like to congratulate the Milan choir students here. This last Saturday, they participated in the MSVMA Solo and Ensemble Choir Festival. I was actually able to watch both of the chamber choir groups that performed, and they were amazing. And I believe that all 4 of the groups that went to Whiteford High School to perform are all moving on to the state competition. So big congratulations to them. And and as well as Shayla Powell. We are so blessed to have her within our district. She's just so great at what she does. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdette.
Sorry.
Ms. Murray.
Thank you. I'm still working out the logistics of writing
Writing.
and thinking at the same time. First, I want to start by thanking our community and staff and students for their participation in the superintendent selection survey. I am also a data person, a numbers geek. I really enjoy digging into that. I appreciated you sharing that additional perspective of how those big results are aggregated across the different representative populations within that survey. So thank you to you and the rest of the Personnel Committee for engaging in that most important work. Related to that, I wanted to lift the District Communication Committee too. I think that Mr. Gearbaugh and myself heard some valuable perspective in that environment as well, and working with those community stakeholders and hearing from them in terms of, what was important to that committee going forward in our next superintendent. And they did lift the question about why did we not do an open posting yet? And certainly I would like to say, this board has not made a decision about who our next superintendent will be, but I think it's important to note that the process of selecting a superintendent is not like the process of hiring any other employee. It's a very different role with very different requirements. And one of the things that I heard most at all of my experiences with the MASB courses, specifically those pertaining to superintendent selection, the MASB, which is our guiding body, strongly encourages vetting internal candidates first for a number of reasons. And so I appreciate that guidance. I, again, am in full support of the next move that we are going to make in hearing from Mr. McMahon. I think that before we consider looking outside of our district, if we have the ability to bring someone who has that knowledge of our community and our students and our staff, and certainly his characteristics and qualifications are well supported by our community survey, I think that that is where we need to start. So again, no decision has been made, but per the guidance of the MASB and the guidance that we're receiving from our community stakeholders, I continue to believe that that is the right next step for us here in Milan. I also want to extend congratulations to our singers and our instrumentalists within the district. I understand that the band, solo, and ensemble performances were well done, but also a learning experience, which is sometimes just how it goes. So I want to thank Mr. Lopez for his time and commitment to going through that experience with our band students, and then, of course, to the incredible Mrs. Powell for all of her continued work with our singers. As a singer myself, I see you, I appreciate you, and congratulations to those students. I never had the opportunity to work with Mr. DeSarbo in a staff capacity, but I have certainly seen and valued his work throughout my time in the district in all of the various roles that I have played. And something that I have always looked for in administrators and had kind of a sixth sense for in my own experience throughout the different districts that I've worked for is that culture piece. An administrator can leave an indelible, as you said, impression on a person within moments of making contact with them in whatever way that you meet them first. And it's very evident that Mr. DeSarbo has absolutely built an incredible culture and has been part of what I think makes our district so, so wonderful. So yes, I wish him absolutely the best. I thank him for his 30 years, is that correct? 30 years commitment to public education, not all in Milan, but many of them, most of them, I think, here in Milan. So thank you and best wishes to him. And I think on that note, I would just like to really urge the administration to do what I'm sure you're already doing, but just taking great care in easing that transition for our teachers and our students. We are in the throes of two really big transitions now, and we're on the heels of a transition at Simons, and so just knowing that that's going to have a great impact on our staff and our students in Paddock, and our community at large, I know that you will take great care in the selection process and then also in making sure that the transition is smooth over the next few months after Mr. DeSarbo departs. Sorry, I'm going a little long this evening. I'm just checking my notes. Oh, I had one last thing. I just wanted to thank, the board has received a number of emails over the last couple of weeks, and it's been really nice to see the continued tone in those emails. We have been receiving, communication and concerns and questions and all kinds of different things pursuant to different issues that the district or our school district, or excuse me, our students are facing at this time. And just the tenor of those conversations or those emails has been really great. I do want to remind the community that just because the board does not reply directly to your email, or if you email a specific board member and you don't get a specific response back from that particular board member, please don't assume that your email has gone unread or unheard. And perhaps as a board we can think about a standardized response just to make sure that we're acknowledging that those emails are received. But just to remind the community that there is a chain of command, and the board has one employee, and that is the superintendent. And if we receive communication that deals with something that is under his purview as, the leader and administrator of our district, whether it's communications or school operations, things of that nature, it's our duty and our board policy to refer those matters to him first and allow him the first opportunity to respond. And then it escalates to us occasionally as needed. So I just want to assure the community that your emails are read, every single one of them, and that you'll receive a response from the person at the appropriate level where that response needs to come from. So as always, we encourage you to speak to us wherever you encounter us, or please come speak to us here at the meetings. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. I do want to thank all the board members that attend classes at the Winter Institute. I appreciate gaining that knowledge because it just does make us a better board for our students. Just a couple of reminders. We are going to receive a presentation from Mr. Lon Smith, our Director of Student Services, on those services at our next meeting. So we're excited to hear progress and that presentation. The other thing I do want to mention is that February is Career Technical Education Month. We were reminded of that from our consortium director for CTE, Chris Rowe. And he will also be making a presentation to us sometime in April. I believe he's going to get on our calendar, so we look forward to that presentation as well. And then I will just echo everything that's been said about our amazing students and the staff that support them, and including Mr. DeSarbo, who is one of the first people that those students encounter as part of the district. He definitely will be missed. So. None of this is possible, this achievement for our students, without the help of our staff and the community that support them. So with that, I have no other business. Any other comments or concerns? All right, this meeting's adjourned at 8:18 p.m. Drive home safely.